We're on Maryland's Eastern Shore. Really no surprise, it's rural. We've got a lot of things going on the shore, many initiatives, many opportunities, but there's one consistent theme that you can't drive down the road and not look right or left and see it. And if you haven't figured it out, what I'm going after, it's agriculture. Agriculture has been the backbone of our rural Maryland, our rural Eastern Shore, an economic driver that has been that driver for as long as we've been around. It's still an incredibly important and will continue to be an incredibly important economic center for our Eastern Shore. Today I've got our next speaker is Chad Nagel. Chad's Vice President of Nagel Farm Services. Chad's experience with a successful Eastern Shore agribusiness. They're focused on trading physical agricultural commodities, providing management services to grain producers. This business gives him a valuable perspective on the importance of agriculture to our local community, and Chad brings a great deal of experience to us today.
Thank you, Bob. He scared me a little bit because as he's giving my intro, he gives you guys the green light to move around if you need to, so I was a little afraid. I had a vision of everybody just hitting the exit all of a sudden, but as I look across the crowd here, I'm kind of hoping we're going to be friends when this is all said and done, because I have a little confession to make, to borrow a line from Will Ferrell. I hope we can all get comfortable hanging out under the trust tree. This morning is the Easton Mayor's prayer breakfast, and about 9 months ago, they asked me if I would speak at that event, and I politely declined because they hold it this time of the year, and it's right in the middle of our busy season, which is harvest, and it's difficult for me to get out of the office for a couple hours in the morning. So I told them that wouldn't work, and much less the time it would take for me to put together an 18 to 20-minute speech. So I told them no. Fast forward to last month, and Bob Rao's office calls and asks if I would speak this morning. For some reason, I told them yes. I don't know why, but I did, maybe because my office is less than a mile away, and it's a short little commute. And wouldn't you know it, they asked if I could prepare an 18 to 20-minute speech. So I don't think it's a good long-term strategy to tell Bob yes and God no, but that's what we did this morning so far. So we're going to try to get through this without any natural disasters or any major calamities. So we put together a little video, our company did. It doesn't quite have the thumping music that the Secretary's video did. That was very impressive. It's a little more slow pace. But I have a group of friends at the gym I see every morning. We've been hanging out with them for years now, 5:30 a.m. We talk about all kinds of crazy stuff. But most of them don't actually know what I do, which seems strange to me. We're close friends. They've lived here on the shore for a long time. Some of them think I'm a tractor salesman. Some of them think I'm an actual farmer. But that is not what I do, so we'll take a look at the video here. It's a couple, 2 or 3 minutes long, and just gives a little insight into our business as well as our customers. The farmer is much more dynamic than what the average observer would think, just from riding by a typical field.
They have huge responsibilities, and they put so much of their heart into this whole aspect of farming the land and growing good crops and getting a good yield.
Just the stresses that exist with farming are very unique, whether it's the weather. He's also thinking about the markets and are they going up or down, and is he able to operate at a profit. But he's also on the agronomy side of things and growing a crop. It's so much more than just planting it and waiting for it to grow. He's doing things that are very sophisticated, whether it's on the scientific front with the seed and the genetics. So many things that are generally out of his control that it definitely creates a common bond amongst the farm community.
So a little kid grows up, decides he wants to be a farmer. It's not because he wants to play the market or make big business decisions or fool with the crop insurance.
It's the stewardship of the land, the challenge of producing a bumper crop, and everything else that goes into that.
As I lay awake now,
They love getting up every day and going to farm. They love the challenge of growing a crop. All of that comes natural to them, but the way our industry is now, they don't have the luxury of just doing that. They have to actually be able to manage the price risk and do all these other things that go along with it. The role that we play for the farmer is we create a market where he can sell his product.
Voices from ear to
We will help them look at all their input costs and see what their actual cost of production is, and let them know, instead of just taking a shot in the dark, we'll let them know if they're selling their crop at a profitable price or if they're doing it underwater, and kind of help them make some decisions and add profitability to their operation. And that can be done by the choices they make with the timing of forward contracts, locking in prices early. It also can be done through trading options and buying futures and doing various risk management techniques and hedging.
can feel it singing.
It's all about service, so that's how you want to treat your customers and your employees.
Waking day, oh.
Grew up around this. We watched our grandfather and father through very difficult times, stay consistent with their faith. That's not going to change going forward.
My poor
There's nothing quite as gratifying and as rewarding as people in agriculture that are working with a mission to feed the world.
God has blessed us, and we're just grateful that our company can bless those around us, and that we just appreciate our customers.
sense music surely greet me. Now I've seen beauty in my time. I walk that storyline.
So there's a little glimpse, thank you. Little glimpse into our business. You notice the theme of faith there at the end a little bit. That's pretty important. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things that can come across and take you out at the knees in our business. So along those lines, I'll give you a little current state of the ag economy. I'll show you this little clip, and there you have it. Any questions on how the ag economy is right now? I'm kind of embarrassed to admit how many times I watched that clip as I was putting this together, but it's extremely addictive. The first bull there, his name is Weather, and he was creating a lot of headaches for the farmer this year. And then the second bull that came along, his name was Chinese Tariffs. So just when we thought we got our feet under us after a wild weather start and then through the growing season, the tariffs with China have really knocked us off at the knees. So I want to do three things. I'm going to just explain a few things that maybe you guys wouldn't know about agriculture as just casual observers. And then I'm going to talk about how our business has changed a little bit and what we're doing to adapt, and then hopefully pull it together in a few minutes to tell you why it matters to you. So I get it that not everybody here is going to get excited about tractors and farming and some of the new technology, but also I'm suspicious, and I would bet you that there's some people sitting here who are like, man, all I ever wanted to do was turn dirt. I always wanted to just get out there and do that, and now you're stuck in a desk job and an office job. So some of the technology that we have today, this tractor right here, this is a 48-row corn planter. Not anything that you would see around here. This is going to be more common out in the Midwest. But the tractor is equipped with what's called RTK technology. So most of you have probably heard that tractors have auto steer now, and that sounds like a luxury item, and I can assure you it's not there just for the farmer to look at a magazine while he's planting corn, but it's there for a specific purpose, and they approach planting their crop with precision. So that lets the operator of this machinery go over the exact same spot every single time he is planting the crop, or if he is making a pass for some other reason. So he follows the exact same track with his tires. That's important because of soil compaction, so it gives him a greater yield potential. If he's driving across different parts of the field, every time he goes across it, it becomes more and more compact and more like a driveway instead of a farm. This also lets him place the seeds precisely where he wants it. So the seed depth as they're planting it, the spacing between seeds, and then of course from row to row, the distance between them has to be perfect. So because of this RTK technology, he's able to dial into within the size of a quarter on his farm, could be a 500-acre field, he's able to get to a spot with that close of accuracy. And then what it also does is as he's going along and planting the crop, there will be times where the planter, that 48-row planter, will go over a section that's already been planted. The technology knows that we've already been to this spot before, and it begins to shut off certain rows of that planter so it won't overlap. That's important because scientists and researchers and agronomists have figured out that if you have too many plants too close to each other, they're competing for soil moisture and they're competing for plant nutrients, so they won't do as well. Another form of technology that's pretty cool is variable rate application. So this is when farmers are putting plant nutrients out. They start with a prescription, and so they actually have a yield map that comes from their combine when they're harvesting that tells them exactly how that entire field did. So in the old days, they would add up all of their tickets from our office when they delivered to the mill. They would divide by the number of acres, and then they would know what that field did as a whole. Now they receive a map that has data that is being input real time as they're harvesting it. It tells what areas were deficient, what areas averaged about a normal yield, and what areas were abundant. And then they write a prescription for the amount of nitrogen or phosphorus or whatever they need to get the soil profile where they want it. And it lets them put exactly what's needed, where it's needed. It lets them dial back and not put any excess beyond what they need. This little clip here, I'll show you quickly. This piece of equipment is using optics. So they actually have cameras on there, and as it's moving along, I don't know if I can play that again. Maybe not. As it's moving along, you may have seen little spurts of spray coming out at certain spots. It's actually identifying weeds as it's approaching. So real-time live as it's traveling through there, they're identifying weeds, and then it's hitting just exactly what's needed, where it's needed. The normal approach here would be to just broadcast across an entire area, which uses a lot more water. So this is much more efficient in the use of water, and it's more efficient in time. And I think it has really interesting implications for like organic farming going forward, because you're able to just target the exact weed that's come up there. It can actually identify the weed, and then it will change the type of herbicide that's needed to kill that weed versus a different one. And then the last little bit of technology I'll share with you, this is soil sensors. Again, I think one of the big issues we will have as a society going forward and in our industry and agriculture is going to be availability of water and water resources, the rights to the water, the cost of water. So farmers are getting very specific and particular about the use of their irrigators and how much they put on and when and how do they need water and what areas need it. They also use this for the soil profile as far as the nutrients in the soil, and do they need more better pH, do they need more phosphorus or more nitrogen. So all of this stuff is kind of interesting to somebody like myself in business, but why does this matter to you guys? There's a couple things that are kind of important here that I think, one of which the labor pool that is required to service a farm operation is much different today than it used to be. It wasn't too many years ago that a farmer, if he broke down, he would fix his own equipment. He would pull up his work truck and he'd get out the wrenches and he'd get a little bit greasy. But today it takes a highly skilled technician to fix his tractor or his combine. It also takes, he needs hardware and software technicians to come out to him to fix all this equipment. Most of the farm operations that we deal with, they have over 6 figures worth of computer equipment, laptops, iPads, other types of software that's in their tractor or their combine, and so it takes a highly skilled workforce around them. The other thing that's very important is the environment. I can assure you that the environment today is better than it was 10 years ago before this technology was available. It's improved the water quality of the Chesapeake Bay. I was a little disappointed. I got to the gym at 5:30 this morning, and the first thing I did was look at the paper, and the front page says that it gets an average grade. So I'm thinking I'm getting ready to come here and tell you people that everything is better, and according to the Star-Democrat, it's only average. But as I kept reading, it's got more to do with the rainfall this summer and not with the farmers. So I'm glad to tell you that farmers are doing their part. I can assure you that. Their legacy is the land. I don't believe there's anyone that has a greater incentive to protect the land and the environment and the water around us than the farmers do. Their livelihood certainly depends on it. Shifting gears to our company just a little bit, we're different today than we were, and we've had to change because of the needs of farmers We deal with them almost more as a professional services firm. It has always been part of our business to receive their grain. We're a delivery location. They come in and we pay them for what they deliver us. That will probably always be our bread and butter and kind of at the core of what we do. But we've also learned that we need to give them more services, and there's demand for us to do more than just that. So one of the things we do, we help them with profitability. So we are taking a deep dive into what their numbers look like. We get their input costs and everything that it takes for them to plant a crop, grow it, and harvest it, from their debt to the cost of seed and the labor and the diesel fuel that they burn. Everything goes in there, and then we put it into a grid, and it helps us understand and helps them understand if they're operating at a profit or if they're in a hole, if there's a loss. We look at what percent they are hedged, and if they're being conservative or if they're being moderate or if they're being more risky than they should. So it's much more like having a conversation with their wealth manager as they're going through this process with us. We also look at market trends and analysis. We kind of track how they are doing, what were the results of the pricing that they did. We try to spot seasonal trends and times where it's good to be active in the market and where it makes sense to forward contract. And we also kind of look at averages and where do they want to be selling. Are they hoping to be in the top third of the market or just meet the average? And then we also, we help them with exotic forward contracts when they need it. So you go back to the grid that we're looking at quite often. Look forward into 2019 right now, a farmer really can't plan to plant anything at today's prices and make a profit. So that has them concerned, it has their bankers concerned. So we find ways to write contracts that have bells and whistles on it, and they're trading option spreads and collecting premium and things like that. They give them a higher than market price and lets them maybe get to that grid out of a red zone and into a profitable zone. So that's kind of how our business has changed a little bit. I'm trying to go through this quickly. And I can tell you one of the reasons that matters to you folks, if you're here living on the shore and you enjoy the rural landscapes, but you're wondering what that has to do with you, it's changed our labor pool as well. 10, 15, 20 years ago, our number one concern was finding reliable manual labor, folks that would actually show up and they were comfortable holding a shovel all day, and they would not leave in the middle of the day, and hopefully they wouldn't do drugs and they would come back tomorrow. Today I can illustrate this by the last 4 hires that I have made were anything but manual labor. We recently brought on a CPA. We now have 3 CPAs on staff. For most of the history of our company, we have not had any CPAs on staff. This was a local person. They went away to the University of Richmond, got their degree. I was working out of state. We brought them back. They're now working with us in our office in Preston. We recently hired a project manager from Whiting Turner who was working in their DC office. Again, a local guy, went away to College Park. I don't know exactly what kind of degree you get if you want to be a project manager, but he got one of those, and he was working building the MGM at the National Harbor, and we convinced him to come back to us. I didn't get into it today, but the equipment that we use, the conveying equipment, the storage equipment, much more high-tech now than it was 10 years ago, so this guy helps us with our building projects and maintenance and things of that nature. Also recently hired a licensed insurance agent and a certified crop advisor. This was someone on staff at the University of Maryland. They now work in my office. And the most recent, the 4th one, was a trader with JP Morgan. This guy was trading structured products and working with their ultra-high net worth individuals all across the country. He was at their Newark office, where they have a campus of about 6,000 employees. He now drives to Y Mills and sits at an office directly next to me. So these people are in our community. They weren't before. And I will tell you that I'm not hiring these people at a discount to what they were making in Newark and DC and other areas out of the state. I'm having to pay competitive wages to bring them here, and they're in our communities. They're engaged in commerce. They use our hospitals, and they buy and sell goods in homes, and they build new homes and everything else. So shifting to a little bit more of a global perspective, why does all of this matter even further? We have a growing population, and by 2050, the question becomes a 10 billion person question of how do we feed a hungry world? And that's a dramatic increase and a growth when you look over time, and particularly when you look at people's incomes. So just in the last week or so, the World Bank put out this study, and you could maybe debate it a little bit, but But it's interesting, it didn't get a lot of publication, but for the first time in the history of the world, we have a middle class that is equal in size to the number of people that are considered poor or vulnerable. That's a trend in the right direction. I get it that that's somewhat depressing that we have that many poor and vulnerable people in this world at 3.8 billion, but for the first time ever, we have at least as many people in the middle class as we do in that category. What's very interesting about that is over time, when you go forward just 12 short years to 2030, where we have 3.8 billion people roughly in the middle class now, it goes to 5.3 billion people. And what happens when people get a little more income? They start to change their diet. They no longer are living off of a handful or two of rice a day, but they're starting to add protein to their diet. And the number one protein they go to as they have more disposable income is poultry. Chicken is the cheapest, and it's the first one that they adopt. And that's important to us here on the shore. Most of you probably aren't aware of this, but the Delmarva Peninsula is one of the number one producing regions of poultry in the country, which would be also true to say that it's one of the number one in the world. So it's right here in our back door. We are on the front lines of feeding a very hungry world that's growing. It's a huge challenge. It's difficult today. It will be more difficult over time. But everything I've described to you today, all the work and the technology that farmers are adapting, the money that they're spending, the investments that they have, the people that are around them servicing their operations, all the changes that our company is making, the people we've hired, and the way that we're engaging with them, we are here and we do this because of the poultry industry. The poultry industry is the backbone of agriculture on the Eastern Shore. We're fortunate to be here on the coast. We're able to hit export markets with our poultry production as well as domestic markets in the Mid-Atlantic, the Southeast, and of course the Northeast. So very different landscape here if we don't have the poultry industry. And I'll tell you, growing chickens isn't sexy. And I know that because my first job as a 7-year-old was in a chicken house. I'd show up every morning. My dad would bring me a packet of Twinkies and a Gatorade, and I would sit there and work and have my little snack. And it's not fun, it is smelly, but it's important. And it's real work, and it's an honest job. And it's going to be very important going forward. We need everyone in our community, whether you're a direct stakeholder in agriculture or not, we need everyone engaged and involved and interested in agriculture becoming and staying profitable. So that's my story, kind of sticking to it. And back to the beginning here, if we could all stay in the trust tree. Nobody saw me here, nobody heard a thing. Chad Nagel wasn't present. So I look forward to your questions afterwards. Thank you.
It's really exciting to hear the story of the impact of agriculture in our area, and from a personal note, we had many engineering firms, or a number of engineering firms in the area, and our main attention to farmland was, can we turn it into residential property or golf courses? I'm really proud to say now that the primary focus in our company, I'm sure others, is really around the agriculture industry and the major impact it's made on firms like ours. The opportunity to work on poultry house projects, management practices for poultry litter, recently large greenhouse projects, nutrient management plans, working with the farms and farmers to come up with the proper way to manage those nutrients. And even our drone industry, we have drones that we can work with the farmers, and it's just fascinating to see what's coming out of that part of it with imagery that can actually tell the farmer what's going on with their plants. Is it getting too much water? What bug is eating it, just from the imagery? So the opportunities are there, and I mention that only because it's a huge impact on our economics and our economic engines. So it's a very exciting time we live in, and that growth in the agriculture world with the technology is very exciting.